Well, joining me now is Kari Lake. She was a Republican nominee for Arizona governor, one of the leading lights in the Make America Great Again movement, and being touted by some pundits as President Trump's running mate in 2024. Well, Kari Lake, welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored.
It's so wonderful to be with you today, Piers.
So look, we've never spoken, but I've watched you with fascination from afar, not least because for a long time you were doing what I'm doing. You were anchoring the news, and you did that for many years. So my first question is, what on earth possessed you to want to give up a lovely job like this to get into the what can often be a hellhole of political life?
You mean, why would I leave the news to jump into the swamp? That is a good question, and I did love my career. For 30 years, I was a broadcast journalist, and I love digging into issues, learning about them, telling people stories. But during COVID, I really had an epiphany, a wake-up call that what was being pushed by the news, the mainstream corporate news, was half-truths and fear tactics, and really was just dividing our country. And I could no longer lend my heart and my soul and my voice and my reputation to putting out half-truths. I wasn't interested in that. So I did a lot of soul-searching and praying, and I walked away from my career, my very successful career, 22 years as #1 news anchor in Arizona. I walked away from a massive paycheck, and I just said, God, I'm putting my life in your hands. Take me where you want me. And the amazing people of Arizona reached out. They were so moved by what I did that they reached out to me and said, would you please run for office? We need somebody who understands us, understands our state, our issues, and will absolutely represent us. And so I reluctantly went into politics. I didn't even know how to run for office. I had to call the Arizona Republican Party and say, how do you run for office? I mean, I'm really at the heart of it just a mom who is concerned about where our state is going. And so that's how I ended up running for office. Little did I know that we would lead an amazing movement here in the state, bringing in independents, Democrats, and Republicans to bring about change here in Arizona and secure our streets and secure our border. Unfortunately, the election didn't go the way that we wanted to because we have a lot of fraud in our elections, and we're working through that right now.
Okay. Well, that was a good pitch, but let me just put a butt into the works there, because I'm curious about a lot of...
Of course.
A lot of things have happened to you in your life where you've made quite dramatic changes, and I want to just talk to you about them. For example, you used to be a Buddhist, according to some of your friends, but now you're Christian. You, before Trump's inauguration in 2017, you posted an anti-Trump post. Now you're one of the big Trumpers. You were very supportive of John McCain after he died and called him courageous and a hero, and then you turned on him. You were a Republican, you became an independent, you then became a Democrat, you're now a Republican again. So your critics would say, come on, Kari Lake, who is the real Kari Lake here? You're flip-flopping all over the place on all this stuff,
let's
personally and professionally. How do you plead?
Let's sort through that. You're throwing a lot at me, so let me hit all of that. I am a woman of Christ and a woman of faith. I grew up Lutheran and Catholic growing up. I'm now an evangelical. And I think that there's something you can garner from every religion in the world. And the Buddhists are peaceful, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. You know, I've been very much into yoga in my life, and so I don't have a problem with any religion of the world. And wherever you can find something that stirs your soul and gives you peace in this difficult time, I think that's wonderful. I find that in the Bible, and I am a Christian and a evangelical Christian, and I don't judge anybody by their religion. I've never made a negative post about President Trump at all. I don't know what you're talking about, and it would challenge you to
it was a Facebook
prove
post
that that's real.
Okay, let me clarify. It was a Facebook post. We're showing it on screen. It was one that you posted to your Facebook, which was right on the eve of the inauguration. And after Fox News revealed this, apparently it then got taken down. But it was not my president, and it was posted
I've never
on your
taken
account.
anything down from my. I've never taken anything down from my Facebook post, and I've never printed anything derogatory toward President Trump. As a journalist, it was not my job to post anything derogatory about the president. I would often talk about something happening in the news and say, hey, what do you think? This is happening and this is happening. What are your thoughts? That's how I use social media as a journalist. And I think that's a really healthy way to use social media, where you get people kind of socializing and discussing issues on social media. I've always been a supporter of President Trump, but I didn't feel the need to put that out publicly. As a journalist, you really should keep your ideas in check. I also covered the McCains, and I covered everybody fairly. It's not my job as a journalist to tell somebody how to think about them.
No, I think the thing with John McCain. Look, let me explain on John McCain, because I knew John McCain well.
Read the post. Read the post for me.
Well,
I challenge you to read the post, and I knew him well as well.
Here's what I would say about John McCain, is that I knew him, I interviewed him many times, I had huge admiration for him. And it seemed after he died, you shared all that admiration. You called him courageous and heroic and so on. But then...
Read the post,
But then in your campaign
really
to be governor, you were
post.
pretty scathing about him. And you said that Arizona produced a lot of losers, and people took that to mean John McCain, right?
Well, I can't help if people think that. I mean, that's kind of a silly thing to think. I covered John McCain. I have immense respect for his military career. You know, he was a politician here for 40 years. I covered him for many of those years. And no politician is free from criticism of their work. I mean, I look at President Trump. He was criticized day in and day out for, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he's still being criticized, even though he's a private citizen. We can definitely criticize our politicians and the work they do. I know that Senator McCain promised, and I covered him probably longer than you did, Piers, to end Obamacare, replace it with something better when he had the opportunity, and that fell squarely on his shoulders. He went in and gave the thumbs down and didn't do what he promised the people of Arizona. When he was running for Senate, one of the times that he was running for re-election, he did an ad saying, build the dang fence, build the dang wall. And then when President Trump said, you know what, let's do that. The people do want that. He fought tooth and nail against that. He was censured by the Republican Party here. I know that on a world stage, many people know him, but a lot of Republicans in Arizona felt like he showed up for a few months every 6 years to run for re-election and then ignored a lot of the issues facing Arizona.
Right.
I don't believe any politician should be free from criticism.
OK, I completely agree. No one should be free from criticism. I think it was the juxtaposition.
I know I haven't been.
No, of course not. I know I'm going to come to that. But I think the only point I would make is you were so praiseworthy of him in his death, and yet very soon after that, suddenly it looked like you turned on him.
Well, Piers, really, honestly, someone has just passed away, and he's an icon. He led an amazing life. I said the Maverick has passed away, and that was his nickname, as you know, because you've interviewed him. I have a heart and a soul, and I know the suffering of losing a father. I lost my father more than a decade ago, and I still tear up at the thought of that, and I feel for the family. I'm a human being, and so are they, and I feel for that. I've not been unfairly critical of John McCain. I think any criticism I've launched at him was that he didn't do what he told the people he would do. And I am not out to get anybody. I actually brought a lot of the Republican Party together. I'm an America First Republican. We have McCain Republicans here, and I believe that we can work together. We agree on 95% of everything, maybe 99% of everything. We Republicans do. And we tend to kind of duke things out and debate, and I wish that the other party did that. They
Kari,
don't. They just fall in line.
Well, Kari, let me turn to one thing which is splitting the party, and that is this issue of stolen elections. So obviously, Donald Trump supported you, and you've been very supportive of his belief that he had the 2020 election stolen from him. I've interviewed Donald Trump, and we had a great interview, but I took him on and said, I don't think that election was stolen from you. And more than that, President Trump, I think your persistence in claiming it is damaging to your chances of potentially winning again. And I would say to you, Kari Lake, you're clearly a rising star in the Republican firmament. You've got a lot of popularity. In fact, since you lost the election, and we'll come to whether you think you have or not in a moment, but since you did, a lot of money's come in for you. So people think Kari Lake, rising star, potentially on a Trump ticket, who knows where that will go? And I'll ask you about that. But you, again, have not accepted the results of the election. And there is a belief that it's almost deliberate. It's like you've looked at Donald Trump and thought, you know what, there's a great way to make money and fame for myself, and that's to be an election denier. And I would simply say to you what I said to Donald Trump. I don't think it works for you guys. I don't think denying the result of democratic elections is an effective tool to actually win elections.
That is the silliest thing I've ever heard. That is absolutely, it's funny, actually. I campaigned 525 days across the most beautiful state in the country, Arizona, and I know the people, and I worked incredibly hard, and our volunteers and the people gathered around. It really was a movement, and you weren't here to cover it, unlike we've ever seen in politics. 72%
but you lost, Kari.
Of Arizona voters, sir, 72% of Arizona voters believe that that election, something was wrong and it wasn't honest. 72% of Arizonans. And I want to make sure, I have children, I have 2 children, 18 and 19 years old. I want to make sure when they grow up, we don't continue to run elections like a banana republic, where on election day, voters showed up, our voters showed up 75% to 25%, 3-to-1 on election day, and the machines weren't working. They printed intentionally the wrong image on the ballot, and that was meant to have the ballot spit out and rejected by the tabulators. 250,000 times on election day, more than half of the ballots were spit out.
But Kari,
by the
as you know, there's been no
Piers, we can't continue to run elections that way.
Kari, there's been no independent corroboration that there was anything fraudulent about this election. In fact, it's pretty clear that you lost to Katie Hobbs, your rival, 50.3% to 49.6%. And as with Donald Trump, when I said to him, where's the hard evidence? He went down all sorts of rabbit holes, but he couldn't produce hard evidence.
There's a ton of Piers. There's a mountain of hard evidence, and when we presented it in our trial, the other side didn't even dispute the evidence. They didn't. They had
but not that the election result was fraudulent,
with zero chain of custody. Yes, well, we can't continue to run elections this way, and we know that we won, and we're going to continue to fight this in a court of law. And it's really rich that you're sitting across the pond acting like you know what happened on Election Day. I did not see your smiling face. We had lots of international media here covering Election Day in Arizona. Yours is one face I didn't see, and nor did I see it.
You could have had my smiling face, Kari, if you'd asked me nicely.
When Arizonans... I would have loved to have seen you. We had more media covering our election than I've ever seen cover any story here in Arizona. And as I said, I covered Arizona for nearly 30 years. So it's okay that you are not comfortable with me fighting this election and fighting for election integrity.
No,
it's
I don't
okay.
mind you.
I don't mind the fighting. Knowing that
Kari,
Piers Morgan...
let me clarify. I don't mind your fighting spirit. I don't mind it in Donald Trump. I've known him a long time.
I have every right to fight this election.
Absolutely,
this is an election contest.
But there does come a point, both for you and...
I'm doing this for the people of Arizona.
Kari, there does come a point when, for the future of democracy, you and Donald Trump have to accept at some point you lost an election. Otherwise, the entire system collapses. If your simple response to losing is always, we didn't lose, we won, then democracy dies.
Piers, I grew up in a family of 9. I'm the youngest. My father was a history and government teacher and a football coach. And he taught us that if we lose, and we lose fair and square, we congratulate the winner, we walk away. And that's exactly what I would do if that was a fair and square election. But I'm fighting for the people of Arizona. I go all over this country. I've been probably to 6 states since the election. In Arizona, I can't walk 10 feet without an Arizonan saying, I voted for you. Everybody I know voted for you. Our ballot was rejected on Election Day. Please keep fighting for us. I'm fighting for the people of Arizona. And I don't mean any offense to you, but I frankly don't give a damn what you think about it. I'm fighting for the people of Arizona.
Listen,
I truly am.
No offense taken whatsoever.
And let me ask you this, Piers. Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's right that you show up on Election Day? That's the big day. On Election Day, and 60% of the voting locations in the primarily Republican locations have ballots that are printed out wrong.
Listen, Kari, all I know...
machines that are jamming, have 4-hour lines.
Kari,
is
all
that
I know,
okay?
albeit from my...
Is that okay?
All I know from my lofty place here in London, and I admit I wasn't in Arizona, all I know is that all the official fact-checking entities that have looked into all the claims do not conclude that you did anything other than lose that election.
Come on. Piers, did you just fall off the turnip truck? We know about the fact checkers, and we've seen them. This has all been revealed. Half of them are leftists working for Facebook. Let's be real, okay?
Okay.
The
Let me ask you.
checkers,
Let me ask you one final point on that.
What do they know? And what do they know about our election?
At what point would you accept that you've lost?
Well, do you think that we have a right to move this through the court system? I think we do. I know that we do. We have the right.
Well, you certainly have a legal right to do it. You've got a legal right to do it. But my point is, at what point...
Indeed.
Is there any
people
point
are
that you...
expecting me to.
You've got a right to do it. Is there any point where you would accept that you lost?
We are taking it to the Supreme Court. That's where we're taking it.
Okay. Let me ask you, secondly, a lot of rumours swirling you might run to be senator. Is that true?
I have had many people reach out to me and say, you need to run for senator. We have an opportunity here to win. And we're really concerned about what would happen if we allow a socialist like the Democrat who's jumped in, or someone like Kirsten Sinema who votes with Joe Biden 95%, 93% of the time. We need to have someone like you run. You're the only Republican who can win. It is in the back of my mind, but my number one priority is my case, and I want to see my case through.
And if Donald Trump says to you he wants you to be his running mate, what would your answer be?
Wow, the hypotheticals. This is crazy. If the royal family invites you in and offers you a job, what are you going to do, Piers? I mean, these are hypotheticals.
Well, it depends on the job. But if it's a good one, I'd say yes, thanks. Thanks very much. When do I start? Where's my palace?
Well, honest to goodness, I have not given that thought, and I think the president's amazing. He was a great president, greatest of my lifetime, and I know that every American was doing better when he was in the White House, and I really miss the economy that he helped lead. I miss the fact that he helped to end wars rather than start wars. First president in my lifetime that didn't start a war. And I know that he cares deeply about this country. We really need to get back to putting the people of this country first, giving them back their government. And I am just focused on what I'm doing here in Arizona, to be honest.
A final question on Ukraine. President Zelensky's here in London, gave a stirring speech to Parliament. I'm curious why so many Republicans seem to want Vladimir Putin to win.
You know, why don't you ask them?
What's your view?
All I know is I am here in Arizona, and it is nothing is more aggravating and anger-inducing to the people of Arizona than watching these buffoons back in Washington, D.C. take our hard-earned money and write a check to Ukraine. Over $100 billion has gone to Ukraine. And we sit here in Arizona with a wide-open border. The narco-terrorists and the drug cartels, with the help of the CCP in China, are pushing in and funneling record numbers, record amounts of fentanyl through Arizona into the rest of this country. We're watching a young generation die from fentanyl poison.
All those are problems.
We have a wide-open border, and they don't want to send.
But Kari, I don't disagree with you.
They don't want to send a penny here.
I don't disagree with you about those issues, and they have to be tackled. But they have nothing to do with Ukraine. And again, my curiosity is simply that when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, for example, America couldn't wait to get stuck in to kick him out, and most Republicans I know supported it. And yet here we have Vladimir Putin, who is on a whole different level of dictator, marching into a European country. And to my astonishment, some Republicans seem to think that the best answer to this is to let him just take Ukraine. And I'm just bemused why. Why wouldn't every fibre of a Republican being be, we have got to defeat Putin wherever he marches in and tries to thwart democracy?
Well, this Republican believes that we need to make sure we're putting the needs of Americans first, and right now Americans are struggling. I've talked to retirees who saved and did everything right. Many of them were even veterans. They did everything right. And they're watching their retirement savings evaporate under Joe Biden. My focus is on the people, the good people of Arizona, and that's why I'm fighting for them every day. I continue to fight. I watch the people who are sitting in office here, and they are dead set on destroying this state and making our lives making us suffer and making us less safe. So my focus is on the people of Arizona, and I intend to keep my focus here. We oftentimes get involved in skirmishes and wars and try to start things up overseas, and I think the American people are growing very weary of that. Incredibly weary watching our hard-earned money go overseas, and we're in a precarious spot if we continue to behave that way. And I don't think that's the American spirit.
OK, well, Kari, on that we will disagree, but it's been great to interview you. Thank you for coming on Piers Morgan Uncensored, and I will follow your rising career with great interest.
And please come to Arizona. I'd love to tour you, give you a tour of the border and show you around, and maybe we could even sit down and have lunch and go over some of the evidence in our case.
I would love to do that, actually. I'll take you up on that. Kari Lake, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Piers.